So today I have the honor to have invited Sammy Bird, who is currently serving at the Richland School Board as a school board member, to be our guest. One of the reasons that I wanted to have this discussion and invite the Chinese community to come in is that recently the school board passed a resolution?
It was a policy.
It was a policy regarding the race and cultural issue. And so I would like him to explain that a little bit more to us and take some question. But reason why he had been driving force behind passing this policy to not teach the critical race theory in our school is exactly because he's seeing that kind of teaching. Not only it doesn't help improve our racial relationship, it actually is doing the opposite of what it says. And therefore, so without further ado, I'm going to turn that over to our guest, Sammy Bird.
Thank you, Dr. Lin, and thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in today. So I'll touch on a few things that Dr. Lin led with. So my background, I was born in the inner city ghetto of East Oakland, California in 1961. And so arguably, as I was playing in the streets of the projects, Dr. Martin Luther King was marching in the streets so that I and many like me would have a future in America through civil rights. And it did occur. And Dr. Lin also touched on something. Why would I oppose the concepts? And I say the concepts of critical race theory, the tenet, and the primary tenet of critical race theory is this, that America is systemically racist, that everything that America does and its operations and practices is done so in order to subjugate Black and Indigenous people of color. You would assert, or you could reason that, well, certainly someone like me who experienced real racism even before and during and right after the passing of civil rights, that you would think that I would be supportive of this. And here's what I say. I ask you to look around, look at your friends, look at your family, look at yourself. Would you consider yourself racist? Would you consider your shopkeepers, your storekeepers, your mechanics, because they are white or Caucasian, would you consider them racist? And I think in most cases we would say, well, no, we think all people should be treated equal. And I would agree with you with that. Even though I suffered during certain years racism, my mother did not raise me to be a victim. And I understand why. My mother raised me to have resiliency, to have self-respect, self-esteem, to believe that I can accomplish anything and everything that I want to, because America is the country in which that can be done. And so imagine this. There's a theory called learned helplessness, Dr. Seligman. And the concept is this: if you believe that you cannot, over a period of time, you will not. And so assertively, if you believe that America is systemically racist, what would be the incentive for a young person to try to achieve success, to try to achieve the American dream, if you believe that the American dream is fake, false, and rigged against you because of your color? And so it is my belief, and not just my belief, but beliefs of many in behavioral sciences and other disciplines, that when you bring forth these types of beliefs, and I won't even, I'll say influence, to be more gentler than indoctrination. But when you influence a child to believe one thing, especially during their developmental years, another theory, Dr. Piaget's theory of cognitive development, children learn these behaviors and they adopt these behaviors because they look at their adults, their elders, those role models, sometimes teachers, parents, and other members of society, and they see how they behave. And through another theory, Dr. Bandura's theory of behavioral modeling, they begin to model these behaviors. They begin to believe what they're being told and what they're hearing. And so what I want to assert with clarity, the reason I do not support critical race theory tenets, and they can be disguised as many things, and I'll talk about that very shortly, you are, in my opinion, subjugating a child to a mindset of helplessness, of victim behaviors versus accountability behaviors. And one of the foundational tenets of the American way of life is meritocracy, that through your hard work and perseverance, you can achieve what you believe. And I think we would all agree that when a child or any other level of development, when any other human being applies themselves and gives their very best, they are more likely to achieve positive outcomes more readily than negative outcomes. So on its basis, on its basic theory, critical race theory is, I believe, and many others believe, that it is harmful to not just young people, but all people of all ages. So let me give some context, because many people would say this: well, Simi, we don't teach critical race theory within our schools, or it's not taught within Washington State. I would ask you to consider Senate Bill 5044. And Senate Bill 5044, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and cultural competency, at the very beginning of that bill that has been passed, clearly states, in order to dismantle systemic racism within Washington schools, systemic racism, critical race theory, everything that happens in America, the American proposition is riddled with systemic racism. Do you see the parallels? We'll table that for a moment, but let's go to the OSPI website or the Washington Education Association's website. And when you go there, you will be able to see Black Lives Matter in school, Black Lives Matter in schools. So when you ask, is this in schools? I ask you, what do you see when you click on those websites? And follow those trails. So what I would assert, it is already within our system. And what you must, and I pray that you consider the possibility that some teachers strongly believe in teaching critical race theory. I no less have received several emails from teachers who were not happy with my standpoint. And I'm not saying all teachers, so I will never say that. As a matter of fact, our teachers are the center of gravity of educating our children. They are doing great work. We need them. They are amazing. There are some who believe that teaching this is good. It sparks critical thinking. I think there's other ways to spark critical thinking without convincing young people that their country, the country they were born, and some who came here, immigrated here for a reason, for freedom and liberty, that this country that they came to is not poisoned with racism everywhere, and that they can achieve what they believe through hard work, through meritocracy. So I'll kind of pause there, but I wanted to give you some facts. Senate Bill 5044, when it says, in order to dismantle systemic racism in Washington schools, you should ask the state and maybe the teachers union, where's the science in Washington State that proves that our city, our schools, our system is systemically racist? I don't believe that is true. So I hope you understand my position. We want to empower our children. We want to build resiliency so that they can overcome any adversity, as my mother did with me during the 60s and 70s, as she raised me to be a strong, as she would say, become a Christian gentleman. Those were the beliefs I was raised on. Educating yourself, believing in God, and never stopping to dream the dream. She could not, I believe, in her job as a mother, to have her child believe that his country that he was born and raised in was racist against him, or that no matter how hard I worked, that I could not achieve my dream. My friends, I will tell you this, K through 11, before I dropped out of high school after finishing my junior year, I struggled academically. I was getting D's and F's, and then I dropped out and I joined the military. And the military matured me. And I later went to college for my undergraduate degree, my bachelor's degree, and I achieved 4.0 summa cum laude, right? I went to graduate school at Villanova University, 3.74, and I'm working on my PhD in industrial and organizational psychology. I've completed all my psychology coursework for my PhD. What I'm saying is, no one gave up on me. My mother never gave up on me, and she raised me never to give up on myself. I urge you to consider the implications of certain theories, of any theory or any influences that would hold a child back by letting that child believe that their community, that their country, that their state is racist against them. Now, this is important to understand with the policy. In the policy 2630, the policy allows children to think critically, to ask questions. It does not limit a child's ability to inquire. What it does ensure is that our children are not learning that their country is systemically racist, or that they are to be, their life's destiny is determined by the color of their skin, or their race, or their heritage, or how they started their life's journey. That does not dictate or determine how they end their life's journey. And I will tell you, my friends, I am living proof of the beauty of America and meritocracy and what it can do when you have resiliency. So, Dr. Lean, I'd like to open it up to more questions, but I do urge people to look up, and it will be posted relatively soon, the actual policy, because it's really talking about, focusing on academics and education, learning social studies and civics. This also opens it up to factual history. Factual history, not factual history as taught by some right-wing conservative think tank or by some left-wing conservative think tank. Factual history as in the actual history that occurred. And with the Asian community, with the Black community, we already know that our ancestors went through hardship and actually was a huge part of creating and developing the America that we all enjoy today. This policy would open that history up to capture what happened, what we learned, and how we have moved forward. So it's more than what you may hear. It's not silencing at all. It's opening up and then making it allowable to teach factual history. And the last point I'll make in factual history, if you do go to the Teachers Union website, and they are not necessarily a friend of conservative beliefs, I'll assert that, you will see that phrase, teach factual history. So you could argue that this is a very equitable policy that ensures that we provide all truth to our students, but yet we do not encourage or teach any beliefs that would lead those students to wrongly believe, that America is systemically racist, and that their efforts, that their accomplishments are based on the color of their skin or their ethnic backgrounds. So this is why I support it, not just because I lived it, but because of what I know to be true based on empirical knowledge.
So one of the questions that someone raised was that there was also another part of the discussion in that policy regarding the gender equity issues. Could you
Yes.
shed some light on that?
I will. And so this is something that Director Jansen's brought forward. And it essentially says there will be no discrimination, that they have equal opportunity and access based on transgender or pronoun association and those sorts of things. And what we as a board said, the reason we did not pass that amendment was because we do already have a policy 8900 within our district. Because what Director Jansen's was referring to are protected classes as per federal law and state law and our policy 8900. So what he was proposing, the board felt more appropriately belongs in that anti-discrimination policy, which we also as a board stated that we will bring forward and look at that policy to ensure that it includes all protected classes, which I've read it and I know that it does. So that was what the board chose not to pass. That was the amendment to include transgender and sexual orientation and desired pronouns, how you choose to identify. That was separated out to ensure that that goes as applicable based on the decision of the board in the appropriate policy of anti-discrimination against those protected classes. And I hope I answered the question.
Another question regarding, let's say, if the things related to critical race theory cannot be taught in a school district, if students in the high school are taking AP classes, would that affect whether their credits be accepted by the college board?
No, so again, this does not change the curriculum or the approved AP curriculum already in place, or any future curriculum that may go through the process of being approved by our school, by our stakeholders, and by the board. This would not affect accreditation at all. Again, this is simply saying, and here's the key thing. Many will say, we do not teach critical race theory in our schools or in our classrooms. And if that is the case, then nothing changes. One of the folks, and there was a teacher and a couple individuals that attended, and one teacher voiced her concern with the word or the terminology of indoctrination by saying that we do not support, right? Children will not be indoctrinated. Policies and laws do not accuse someone of doing something that they have not done. And so what I would say to that teacher and any concerned citizen or any educators, this policy is not accusing teachers of wrongdoing. That's not what policies or laws are there for. They were to give us left and right limits. They were to give us direction and guidance so that we know what is approved and what is not approved. What this policy is simply saying is we as a board agree that we do not want our children to be influenced or indoctrinated with certain elements of critical race theory, plain and simple. It does not accuse an administrator or teacher of doing something without proper justification. So just because we have a policy saying no stealing, it does not mean that we are calling everybody in our district by having a no stealing policy thieves. It simply says don't steal. That's it.
So one of the quick question is someone jumped in the middle and asked if you could share a link to the curriculum or the policies. Do you have it handy?
Yes, so I have it. And what I can share with you right now, because what occurred at our last board meeting this last Tuesday was for us to go through first reading. And so the policy as written, we as a board with a vote of 4-1, 4 yes, 1 nay, approve this policy as written. What will happen on our next board meeting, which I believe is November 8th, we will have the second and final reading. And at that time, the policy will be adopted, and we can put it on the website. And as I'm telling you this, I can also say that it should be published under the documents for this last school board meeting. We should be able to access that off of our website to find it. And so it came with the discussion points for that last school board meeting. So it should be made public. And if it is not for any reason, I would encourage you just to call the school district office, and they will ensure that you get a copy.
Okay, so now I'm going to open it up so that if you have questions, please raise your hand. So I will unmute you so you could ask the question. Or you can write it in the chat. So I'm doing that so that we don't have several people jumping onto the microphone all at the same time. So if you want to ask a question, please raise your hand. So if no one raising question, let me ask you this one. Could it be that even though you didn't think that there is systemic racism going on, could it be that there are some that have been so pervasive that we don't even recognize it, and therefore the educator has to teach the student to recognize them, to know, oh, these are the kind of behavior or thoughts that are discriminatory in nature, and in order to root them out?
You know, I would, so as someone who has studied psychology, I'm a proponent of understanding human behavior, right? So I support that 100%. So for the appropriate classes, absolutely. We can talk about cognitive processing. We can talk about the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. Because one of the things we would assert, and by the way, folks, I do teach conscious and unconscious bias. I've also been the person who was the keynote speaker for our region's diversity conference at the Toyota Center. I am the person who teaches organizations diversity and inclusion. And I'm also the person who has been labeled as a subject matter expert on critical race theory, and I lecture on it. I've read the textbook, which is, I'll give you the citation, Critical Race Theory, third edition by Delgado, Stefancic, and Harris, 2017. And I've read that book. And so I know what I know. And I guess, Dr. Lynn, to answer your question, we do not want to silence voices or silence or minimize critical thinking. We all know that racism exists, which is based on ignorance. We know that all types of neurobehavioral problems exist in human beings. And so that is just a fact and science of the nature of humanity, that we have good and evil, you could argue as well.
Yeah.
What I would say is this: as a parent, do you want your child to be aware, which is one thing, or do you want your child to have a mindset that the people that they engage with, without looking at them objectively, are racist? And I evoke to one of my childhood heroes, besides my single mom with 7 kids, right? Pre-civil rights. I say that again because my mother was an angel. She was my role model. She was that strong. And I'm going to say to the person who thought I may be racist, she was that strong Black woman who raised me to have resiliency because she wanted her son to be successful in life. But Dr. Martin Luther King himself, as we all know, said, judge not a person by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Would you want your children to approach others with good intent, without a self-fulfilling prophecy of doubt or suspicion as to their intention? Can you see how even we as adults, imagine if people engage someone of a different ethnicity or heritage and think because, well, they look like this, or because I don't know them, so they must be this. This is happening under the teachings and the influence of critical race theory, whereas even white children are being led to believe that they are so born with this white privilege and that they are being labeled as descendants of the oppressors and the subjugators. I would never teach a child anything like that. I have a child over right now, one of my daughter's best friends, childhood best friend, and this young man associates as being gay. He'll do a sleepover. He is welcome to my house and he is loved in my house because I know his family and that's a good boy. My point is, you can call me a racist or a homophobe or any other name you want to call me, but who I am is who I am. And what I'm sharing is based on my, as objective as I can possibly be, based on my experience, my knowledge, and yes, objectivity to do what I feel is best for children as a servant of our community. And by the way, that's why I'm honored to be in this call, because I answer to you. I answer to all the people in this call and all the people that are out there in my community. You are who I work for. And I do want to know how you feel. And I do appreciate it. And even the person who thought I may be racist, I don't take it personal because I know you just don't know me. But if you did know me, I know you would know that that's not true. That some of the things people have said about me, it's just simply not true. And I don't think I have to out my own family members to demonstrate that. I don't have to do that, nor should I. Open, no self-fulfilling prophecy. I think when we engage people, we should engage people with positive intent. And then if for some reason they work their way down, that is on them, not on us. I think we should expect that of our children. And I don't think we should ever label children anything unless we know that that is just a fact, or any adult for that.
Yeah. Okay, so anyone would like to ask a question, join in discussion? Okay, so there are 2. Okay, so Yiqian.
Hi.
Hey.
Hi, Mr. Bird. First of all, thanks, Dr. Lin, to host this session. And I have to confess that before I attend this session, I have a lot of emotions running through because of the language they used in the policy that just passed. I'm a teacher trainer. I teach at WSU Tri-City. Therefore, the anxiety run high because we don't know what it means. We don't know what it's supposed to mean. What I do know that is that it is good intention from your part that I truly believe that. The only issue is that I wish the communication can be a little bit more transparent, more discussion, and perhaps give us a XYZ, what not to teach, what to teach. Because the letter itself posed doubt to what teacher has been doing, even though I think minutes ago, you did mention that you appreciate the teacher has done a fantastic job. Because let's be truthful. Education is to prepare. Every children has ways to navigate the world using critical thinking strategies. So our job as educators to not frame their mind, but is to open their eyes and open their mind. So I also think that you coming from a psychological background, understand the importance that how limited point of view will constrain our understanding of the world. So that being said, that I appreciate that you explained a little further earlier. And so, but I'm still very ambiguous. So I hope that in 2 weeks, you will be able to provide us some guideline for teachers to assure that, like a pat on their shoulder, say, hey, folks, you've done a wonderful job. This policy is, I think the emotional run high because that's not enough communication. So I do hope that since the policy is already set in gear, that's find a proactive way to make sure that all kids are getting the best education in Richland.
Thank you, Chen.
Thank you. My question, however, I'm gonna be, even though I'm a chair of Asian American interest group in National Education Association. There's so many history about Asian being, oppressed in a systematic world, and just like today, that in Washington D.C. actually a group of people, Asian people, they are protesting, want to have more transparency about Asian students get fair treatment for college admission.
Yes.
And I think the history has been long. We have a lot of scar, but I hope that this policy is not further to divide us, but it's finding a more proactive way to glue us together. So I just have to be honest. I give you a little bit benefit of doubt right here, but moving forward, I want to ask you a true question.
Yes.
When will we build a high school?
So there were a lot of questions, and I do want to speak to some of the other things you said, but I want to answer your question. We all know that we need to do it. And so here's where we're at. I find myself talking in circles right now. Here's where we're at. We are still moving forward. So all the things that we would need to do to get the bids and to get that process moving, if we had passed the bond or put a bond forward this February, we are still going to put forth in a levy to do all the exploratory work that we would have needed to do to build that school. And so once we do come out with the bond, and we're projecting that to be in February of 2024 for the new high school, we are not going to be behind, because in this levy that we're putting out now, it would have funding to do all those exploratory studies and to keep the ball rolling towards getting ready to break ground on the new high school. So the reason we delayed it was because there were more questions that the board had in terms of how money was going to be spent, where we're going to get the best bang for the buck, were we spending too much in light of the current economic status with inflation at such a high number right now. We wanted to make sure we were doing our due diligence so that when we made a decision to increase taxes for our citizens, that we knew what we needed to know. I hope that answered your question. It is projected, and you'll see in some of the notes from this last school board meeting, it's still projected, and I don't want to speak out of turn. I wanted to say the number was, the year was 2026, but forgive me. But it is projected, so we still are moving forward. Hopefully I answered that part.
You did. Thank you.
you.
It's delayed by 5 years. So
Yes.
I do hope that in your turn you will highly advocate for this effort, because if you go to tour around Richland High School, they are jammed in the portables, and
Yes.
this is not a 21st century American school.
Yes.
So I hope that you get my, you get my idea. Thank you. I'm not holding the mic, so yeah,
oh
I'm
no,
going to mute myself.
Ishan, I appreciate you, but so I want to say a couple of things. Number one, just to answer what you may want to know clearly, and anybody else listening, I support building the new comprehensive high school. So my vote for building the new comprehensive high school would be a yes vote. And I can tell you that because you're not a school board director, and Dr. Lean's not a school board director. So we don't have a quorum. I will tell you that's what I believe in, and that's what I will support. So there's the answer in that. The other thing I want to reiterate, my support for our teachers and educators, and it's not just lip service. The teacher plays one of the most important roles in a child's education next to that child's parents and family. So our teachers are the center of gravity, along with families, in a child's education. And again, I want to assure you on the policy that I support, it is not to minimize critical thinking, because it specifically identifies in this policy that children will have every opportunity to critically think and process in their reports and their assignments, to think outside of the box. That's what we want. You're absolutely right. Critical thinking. The other thing is this policy, I would argue, my friend, that the good news is this is not limiting children, or excuse me, limiting our educators, because we will have the approved curriculum, absolutely, through our process. But we have to be careful that we don't limit our teachers so much so that they cannot teach effectively. So I will also tell you that I'm the kind of person that says, I trust first. And so with our teachers, I'm telling you right now, I trust first. There's no suspicion. And then that's not me. I trust up front. The fact that you gave me the benefit of the doubt, your kindness, your grace, this is how we can have these discussions, so we can always do better as a community and as a society. So I want to thank you for your kindness. That meant a lot to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, since the policy is set in gears, all we can do is to look forward to it,
Yes.
and then find the best solution to help our children. I do
Amen.
hope that, if based on what you say, that I hope the changes would be more Chinese American histories get taught in at least our region. The railroad
Yes.
history should be taught.
Yes.
We're gonna teach the factual history.
Yes.
And that's, like you say, that it's a factual history. It's not
Yes.
opinionated. It's not indoctrinated.
Yes.
History
And
is
Chen,
layered with many.
I'd like to
many
comment
things.
on that.
Yeah.
Because there is so for our Chinese heritage citizens, and for our African American heritage citizens, although what happened back in those days during slavery and then the railroad and essentially slave labor and the abuse, I would also argue there are so many people in our history that we can be proud of, who are part of building this nation, who are a critical part of who we are today as a nation. And America is made strong because of the diversity of our population. And although we started out at some terrible, terrible times, and again, this is the civilizations as we've evolved from dragging our hands in the dirt to just ignorant people and racial prejudice and all those evils, which I call evils, excuse me, we have evolved.
Yeah.
And so there's so much goodness in our history, but we acknowledge what happened, and we talk about the heroes who helped make this nation the great nation that it is. And believe it or not, we know it to be true, and we want everybody to know those heroes come in different cultures, different heritages, and different cultures and different colors. And there's pride in teaching that. So I want you to know how I feel and where I stand. And thank you for your kindness.
You're welcome.
Okay, so April.
Hi, Dr. Lin. May I ask you to translate my
Yeah. Yes.
question? My question actually,
Yeah.
actually,
你可以用中文问，如果你
OK
需要的话。
OK，因为我的问题其实是想 clarify 一些事情，因为我在微信上看到了很多人的评论。第一个是有人认为，如果就是有的人认为，因为 Sammy 他 reject 另一个校董 Rick Jason 的这个法案，所以他就会导致更多的 censorship，更多的禁书。Is that true?
So the question is, since you, because of the policy that you just helped passed, Sammy, whether that would lead to censorship on books.
No. Well, so here's what I would say on that. And by the way, the first thought when I studied Mandarin Chinese, it is such a beautiful language. And I love listening. So every time I hear it, I need to get back to my books and study again. So that being said, no is my first instinct. The requirement here, or the important thing to understand, and again, I can only hope that you all would agree, that April would agree with it, is that we are saying that we are not teaching certain things. And so the censorship would say, not necessarily censoring books, but if you are bringing books in and the books are critical race theory, white people are evil, then we probably would look at that and say, that does not meet this policy. Or if you bring books in that says, America is a racist country and continues to be racist against Black Americans, Asian Americans, or any variation, then that would probably say we cannot. For the same reason, if you bring, and I'm going to be careful how I say this, because some things have been passed that I don't necessarily agree with, certain sexually explicit materials, that would also be censored. So we already have, April, some censoring. We have to ensure that children are not being subjected to certain things that would be harmful to their upbringing. So that's happening. But what I would say is this specifies that we do not or would not want to see any curriculum or to have this taught that would say that America is systemically racist and those sorts of things, or to lead children to believe that because they're Asian or Black or for religion, Muslim or Catholic or Mormon, that because of that the country is against them. We are saying that we don't want that taught. So if a teacher or a school or a library would bring a book in that teaches that, it would not align with this policy. I hope I explained that clear enough. The intent is not to censor, but this does point out that we do not want to teach certain things. And so if you bring a book in that teaches that, it makes sense to me to say we would not allow that book because it's going against the policy.
Okay, my second, yeah,
清楚吗？刚才那个
听懂了。
OK，
清楚 ，Yeah, thanks. The second question is， 更多因为性别意向而不被认可的孩子们会受到排挤。Is that true?
So would it cause people who identify with trans to be, to suffer discrimination from their peers?
No, no, not at all, not at all, because this does not talk about that whatsoever. This is about race and curriculum. The school district and I don't know who the people are who did the change. I know that when I initially proposed this was race and curriculum. It had nothing to do with culture. And in our last school board meeting, the word culture was removed. The intent of this policy was specific to race, curriculum. And while I'm on this subject, or based on your question, April, I would say this, so everybody understands Simi Bird's belief. Our trans children, our LGBTQ children should be welcomed and cherished. Our children, however they find themselves, we must ensure that they are treated fairly, equally, and equitably. I think we would all agree on our children are our future. We should never discriminate against any child in our district, ever. This policy does not point out, single out, or even mention anything about LGBTQ or trans at all. That's why we voted not to include that language, because it was more appropriate to our anti-discrimination policy 8900. This is strictly for race in curriculum. I hope I answered your question.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. And I hope that answers other people's question too. Then that leads me to another question is, in this is called a race and curriculum, but how about the education or the sex education about trans LG?
So the comprehensive sex education
Yes.
part.
Yeah, how about that?
And so, April, that is in a separate policy, and that is required by state law. And so if there's any more information I can get you all, I would gladly get it for you. This policy does not speak to comprehensive sex education whatsoever. It's mostly about ensuring that we are not teaching elements of critical race theory within our schools. And again, this inspires me to, again, give more clarification. You will not find in my beliefs, I've not seen every single book in our library, but I do not think you will ever find a textbook that is given to children that says critical race theory for elementary children, or critical race theory for middle school children, or critical race theory for high schoolers, advanced, right? AP. We're not going to see that, I do not believe. But we would all agree as sensible adults that you can bring forth material that will have the tenets or elements that accomplishes the same thing that does not have that label. Those are the things we want to be careful of. But at the same time, I'm the first person to say, I go by science, math, facts. That is quantitative proof of what is happening. So this is more of a prevention, not an allegation to say that we have this in our schools and that teachers are teaching it. We're putting this in place because there are concerns, and in other school districts, they actually do have this. And there's been, as you probably will see on different media sources, that this does happen. Whether it happens in our district or not, it can happen. We are just being proactive to ensure that we focus on educating our children and not bringing forth any materials that would skew their belief in themselves because of the color of their skin or their race. So thank you, April.
Thank you. I do have to ask the question.
So I think I need to let another member ask the question first.
Sure. Okay, sure.
Wang Jing. Is he still here? Wang Jing?
Yes, sorry. Hey, yeah, I was trying to unmute myself, but I wasn't able to. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ling, and thank you, Mr. Bird, for the open communication about this issue. This is my first time attending. It's more like just a comment, not a real question. I just thank you all for provide this opportunity and for very informational discussion. I guess the comments is that I am really looking forward to see what's the real policy says, because I believe all you guys act on good intention based on your expertise, your knowledge, and your personal experiences. But that, like, all policy can have unintended consequences. So yeah, I will very much looking forward to see that being output somewhere, so that we can share with a broader audience in our kind of a WeChat group or something, to let others have a chance to read the detailed policies. And I'm looking forward if there are future chances to discuss after we read the policies. That would be fantastic. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
So yeah, I want to ask a question myself. So now there's probably some confusions, or people may conflate together whether you treat with equity the people who identify with trans or LGBTQ, but there's a difference between treating them with respect or equally well as other students, from teaching, using books to teach at that very young age, let's say from kindergarten or first or second grade, that would teach them about sex or gender. So because teaching them to question their own gender at that age would be a different thing, as opposed to just teaching them to treat everyone with respect and not to discriminate against others, right?
Yes, and so Dr. Lin, I agree with you 100%. And again, you'll folks will get to know me. I'm not afraid to tell my truth or what I think or what I believe, because you deserve to know that. I had a lot of folks who were upset with me because during my campaign, when I was running for office, I told everybody who I was and how I was. And the reason I did that was because I'm not a politician. All I know is to be true to who I am. And I think if someone is going to vote for me, they need to know who I am, how I think, so that once I got elected, these things would not be a surprise. And you will look back on what I have said in the past as I before I became an elected school board member. This aligns with who I am as a person. Dr. Lin, I will say with clarity, I believe that all children must be valued in our school system, regardless of how they identify or how they look or they're set. It just should never be a consideration. These are our children, and we give them everything that we can give them. That's my belief. I do not believe that the schools or any institution or I'll just say institution, should influence a child to do anything without their parents' involvement. And essentially what I'm saying in clearer terms, let kids be kids. And if a child develops, and at some point in time, whenever they develop and they believe that they're a certain way, well, then we respect them for who they are and we treat them right and we educate them. We need to remember that jobs of public education is to provide a quality education to our children. And we have to ensure that we do not cross the line between educating children and raising children. Because when it comes to raising children, I do believe that parents and families are the most important, play the most important role in a child's upbringing. Just because a parent enrolls their child into public education, they are not signing away their rights to parent, and nor do most parents want the public schools to raise their children. That happens at home. Those values, those morals, those beliefs most often happens within the home, which is why the strength of the family is so important in the development of our children. So we're just saying, let's not, as a public institution, influence children outside of educating our kids on the reasons we're there. English language arts, math, science. That's where our focus should be. I think Yiqian has a question.
Yeah, so I just asked her to unmute.
Hi, it's actually my daughter's question. I'm driving and I'm with her right now. So
Oh,
Catherine,
neat.
you want to ask Mr. Bird the question?
So I'm in AP US history right now, and I was wondering with this new policy, would we still be able to learn about like the history of the US, including slavery and all that?
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Oh, I'm going to say that a million more times. Absolutely. And thank you so much for your question. We must, because it's part of our history, and at the same time, as we're learning about the horrors of slavery, and it was terrible, but that did not define what our nation is. That was a dark point in our time, and we need to be aware of it. But we should also be aware of the thousands of soldiers who died to give freedom, to abolish slavery, and all Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln, and all of our history that is true and factual must be taught, so that we learn from that past. We learn from our past, and we see how we've grown from that past, from those times to a Black president through Barack Obama, right? Whether a person voted for him or did not vote for him, that was a testimonial to the diversity of our nation. We continue to grow, and we grow better. What I'm seeing now is so much division. This is why I praised Yi Qin. Her comment, how she approached it, I didn't feel threatened. I didn't feel attacked. I felt like a kind person was asking a sincere question and sharing her thoughts. For me, I'm more driven to listen and to absorb everything I can. And that is what I'm trying to communicate with all of my passion that I typically bring to a discussion. This is what right looks like when we don't have these thoughts that says a person is bad because of the color of their skin, or because they're not smart because of the color of their skin, or because they can't be president because of the color of their skin. Let's set that aside. History is history, but the human condition and the beauty of meritocracy in America, that is what our nation is. This is what we represent. To have Yi Qin teaching teachers, right? An educator. You are a role model. This is the beauty of America. Dr. Wei Lin, my friend, you are a role model for America. And I will even say myself, as that kid, that high school dropout, the dumb kid they used to call me, right? Not bad. We can be role models. And some people may call me naive, and that's why I educate myself. I believe in the positive, the greatness of our country, and the best in people. Much of that comes from my Christian upbringing, so I'll put that out there. But I think we are all better as a nation when we can approach one another with kindness and grace and positive intent to listen and learn from one another. That's why I so appreciate this opportunity.
I just want to interject that when I supported you for running on the school board, some people would see that as just being a political opportunity because I supported you because of the politics aligned. But actually, they may not know that in your background, we have talked about how big budgets you have managed in consulting or advising other company how to restructure their company organization, that you are actually able to run a large organization with huge amount of budgets. So you have the background to be both either on the board or actually being an executive to run these things. So I think I just want to put it out there that Mr. Bird is not just someone who's care only about politics. Yeah.
Oh no, and thank you, Dr. Lin, for saying that. And so that is the truth. So Dr. Lin knows me personally as well. And so that's one of the things he has actually told me. He said one time, so Simi, essentially what you do and get paid for a lot of money as a consultant, developing leaders, helping people restructure budgets and restructure organizations and improve performance. We as a community, we get your services for free. And I said, yes, you do. And so I can attest to that. That is the truth. You knew that I was what I do for a living. So I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a therapist where I do that and clinically. I'm an industrial and organizational behavioral scientist. So I look to improve programs, to improve cohesion, leadership, organizational performance, things of that nature. That's my passion and my love. But in all things that we do, it's the human mind. It's our behaviors and how we behave towards one another. The more positive, the better the outcomes. That's scientifically proven. That's essentially what I'm saying. And so for that same reason, we want to build resiliency in our children. We don't want them to have what we would call self-fulfilling prophecies, right? We want them to be able to clinically judge and see things as they truly are, not based on something they may heard or suspect could be, but how things really are. But also be open to learn and listen from one another. You know, that's Socrates and Plato, the Socratic method of dialectic engagement. I support that. Let's learn from one another continuously.
So there's a question on the chat. Can you read it?
I saw it pop up and I can look.
Yeah.
I think
So, Mr. Burr, how do you assess the status of the current curriculum at Richland schools regarding sex education and gender identity? Is that overly conservative or overly progressive?
So my opinion, and again, it's not me rendering judgment or taking a vote in anything, I think it's overly progressive. I am a believer again, and I will always double and triple down on it until new science comes out, but it's my belief, let children be children. Our school system's primary function, and I-Ching said it, and forgive me if I'm saying this the wrong way, but our job is to prepare children to be successful in life and successful in work. And we do that by providing them with academic knowledge of English language arts, math, and sciences has been demonstrated to be those core competencies that children must learn. So I want us to refocus not just our curriculum, but also our resources. Right now, we have a huge learning loss. You know, in the state of Washington, and forgive me for I'm still with you in the comprehensive sex education, but currently in the state of Washington, when you average out all the school districts, for English and language arts, only 50.7% of students met grade level standards. And for math, only 37.7% of students met grade level standards. And for science, only 42.7% of students met grade level standards for math. That's taking all the school districts and averaging them out. Each district is different. And so when we talk about what we are bringing to educate our kids on, I think right now more than ever, we need to laser focus in on providing our children with the support that they need to fill that learning gap, to get back to where they are reading at grade level standards, understanding math and science at grade level standards. I think that should be our number one priority. I think that is very, very important. And I agree that having other knowledge gives and supports future success in life. I agree. But I want us to refocus our resources and our efforts on filling that learning gap that has been lost.
Hi.
I did answer that.
Sorry, it's me again.
Hi.
So I appreciate you mentioned the test score because it's not surprising. It's sad, but it's not surprising. But I would love to pick your brain about what strategies and what kind of support you have in mind. And as a school board, how can you better support teaching qualities? And I think earlier in the group, sorry about my background, that's another problem in our town. Earlier in our group that the parent has concern, has any teacher evaluation? Do we hold accountability for the bad evaluations? Because there are a few teachers, you know, in the tip of my tongue, it's not doing what it's supposed to do, but it's seemingly they obtain a tenure position, and therefore the kids are not learning what they're supposed to learn in the high school or even early ages. Has
the board have any solutions or strategy to help boost up the test score?
Thank you, Etienne. Etienne, if you keep this up, we're going to be good friends. Okay. So let me answer your first question. And it was solutions. I am a person who believes in solutions for action. Here's my belief and what I intend to propose to our school board in the weeks to come. I think the number one solution to make up for learning loss is bringing in more support for our teachers, in particular to tutor, to bring in those outside of the classroom one-on-one learning opportunities to meet that child where every child is, because every child learns differently. I told you me, right? I wasn't the dumb kid. I just learned differently. And back when I was a young man, they didn't have those resources. And certainly my mother could not afford a tutor for me because we were poor. So my whole life, except for when I became an adult, I was poor. So I believe in that extra attention, that extra activity with a learning professional, even one of our amazing paraeducators, one-on-one with students, finding out where that student is, what that student needs, and ensuring that those needs are filled. It will take more resources, but I will tell you, this is Semi Bird talking. I believe it is worth every penny to put more money into those tutoring. They have a comprehensive tutoring program. That, I believe, is now currently, right? Shinzai, right? This is the time to bring forward a program like that. Again, we evaluate each child separately and understand what their needs are and give them what they need. Sometimes it's that one-on-one learning or that extra time. And I would even include, especially for our Title I schools, outreach. In my mind, I envision these paraprofessionals, or again, I know our teachers are pulled in so many different ways, but these educators being able to go out somehow to those communities and engage with those children in their homes, maybe. I'm just thinking outside of the box, outreach, but a comprehensive program. The other thing you mentioned, which I spoke about, and Dr. Lean knows throughout my entire campaign, and I still, in my heart, it's one of the, I'm going to be cup half full, my concerns is accountability. I mean this with respect to our administration and to our teachers. I think we could do much better in terms of accountability. Right now, we are taking steps as a board. By law, we are supposed to hold our superintendent accountable. I teach leadership development. I've written leadership theory. This is what I do. Accountable leadership is the center of gravity of organizational performance. We must ensure that our leaders are held accountable, and our leaders, our school principals and vice principals, must ensure that our educators are held accountable. It's not to restrict them. It's not to hurt them. It's not to target them. But sometimes teachers and any employee, leaders, that's what I do. I'm an executive coach, right? They need a little help. They need a little support to understand and maybe learn techniques, right? Like our letters training, right, that we're bringing forth. New techniques to help them perform better. And sometimes, some of them, like myself when I was younger, I needed someone to hold me accountable, to ensure that I was doing what I was supposed to do the way I was supposed to do it. And by doing so, it helped me to improve. So you are reading my mind and my heart. We must do better with accountability. We must set performance standards and hold our staff accountable to meeting those standards. And I am not saying that we just fire someone. What I'm saying is, like our children, we provide them with the resources, training, and coaching that they need to do better. Because anybody who chooses the profession of teaching is already up here in my book. They are already very high in my respect. So let's give them the support they need. But it has to start with us holding our staff accountable. Just like you, through your questioning, and Dr. Lean having me here, holds me accountable as a school board director to say, Simi Bird, you pushed this policy. Now you need to talk to us about it and help us understand some things that we need to know about it. That is my job. And I will come back here anytime, every time, to answer to you the people that I work for, because you are who I report to, and I do so with honor and pleasure. So thank you for the opportunity.
So a follow-up question on that, the budget, the allocation, the proportion of money spent for facilities, spent on teachers, and spent on administrative staff. Are they proper or are they not quite so proper?
Oh, you're trying to get me in trouble, Dr. Lane. Here's what I'll say, and I don't like to use political answers. Anything I say, I was going to say can and will be used against me. And that's rightfully so. Again, accountability, right?
Yeah.
There was a time when the narrative, like, our teachers are so underpaid, thinking $25,000, $30,000 a year. I would encourage everybody to look at the salaries of our teachers, of our administrative staff. You will find that it averages out in six figures when you take those different levels of staff and average it out. But again, I'm not trying to say they're overpaid or they're underpaid, but what I'm saying is you are the taxpayers. Our public school system operates for you. We work for the community. Those schools are there for the community. It is the community who pays taxes that funds these schools. So you deserve to look at it critically and say, can we shave some money off to create a comprehensive tutoring program to do outreach and meet every child where that child's needs are and give them as much time one-on-one as they need to get back to grade level standards? I would vote for that every single day. And I promise you, I shouldn't say that, but I would imagine most parents would do the same thing. My daughter, she is getting great grades now, but when she was smaller, and she came up through the Richland School District, this was back at White's Bluffs. And those amazing teachers and administrator brought us in, parent conference. We did special testing, right, just to make sure Hannah was not on spectrum and what needed. We ended up, because we could afford it, we paid another friend of ours. She's like family. She's like a daughter to me. She's a teacher also. We paid her to come over once a week with Hannah to teach. I think twice a week at one point in time, because we could afford it. Some Title I families cannot afford it. Other families cannot afford it. I think it's part of our job of public education. If we are not batting 100 in the classroom, then let's give a little bit more outside of the classroom to provide those children with the education that they need and deserve. And I know those parents and families want.
I think we've gone past an hour. So I would take two more questions and then we'll need to let Mr. Bird get back to his family. So, okay, so from iPhone, thank you, Mr. Bird. I like the term meritocracy you frequently bring up. Can this be at least introduced to our children to prepare them for real world? Global competition demands meritocracy to assure the United States and its people stay in its leading position.
Yes, my friend, and you'll see it. It is actually in this policy. The fundamentals of meritocracy is here to say that children are not subject to what they can achieve based on the color of their skin or their heritage. That is up to them. And the principles of meritocracy is a core foundational tenet of the American proposition. That is what has made our country. Gosh, I could go down, I could talk hours.
Yeah.
We go back to the birth of our nation, just into the industrialization age. We became the leader of the free world faster than any civilization in the history of civilizations, based on that theory and concept of meritocracy, that entrepreneurial spirit of putting self out there, taking those positive risks to create value. We have a balance in this amazing nation between individualism, right, and collectivism. When it's time to come together to get things done, we come together and we get things done. That is the beauty of the American proposition. But our American proposition is also supported by our small businessmen and women and those young people who are coming up who say, I can, and they are willing to work hard for it. I think that's what all parents want for our children, to never give up and to reach for the stars. We need to give them that resiliency, that self-worth, that self-esteem, and that personal courage so that they are willing to reach for the stars, and never bringing anything to them that could hold them back or make them question whether the American dream is really available for them, because it is available for them. And I say, as you guys so warmly welcomed me, my life is a testament to the beauty of meritocracy. When you look at where I started and you look at where I'm at and how I started, all those barriers, here I am. And Dr. Lean knows I experienced racism. I've been spat in the face and called the N-word, all of that. But my mother did not raise me to be a victim. A victim behavior is blaming others. Instead, I was inspired to work harder, to try harder, and it has paid off. Meritocracy. And thank you for your comment. That is my favorite word, and that's how I raise my children as well. And I have my 2 older daughters. They are amazing. And my baby, she is amazing. She knows if I brought her in my office right now, I'd say, what does daddy always tell you? And she'll tell you this: always be thankful.
Right.
Thank you, Wang.
So anyone else would like to ask the last question?
Thank you, Michelle.
Yeah. So April.
My last question is it possible to start like a Chinese immersion school possible in a Richland school district?
You would have my vote immediately. I would say, so I am biased. I was telling you the truth when I say I love the language, I love the culture. I've been to Taiwan. Cannot talk about mainland, but I love the culture, I love the language, and I'm a fan. So yes,
Okay.
the answer to that. I think of all the languages, Mandarin Chinese and Spanish should be languages that should be a priority for immersion for dual language.
Okay. Yeah, maybe we should then how can we kind of like help contributing to that? If
So,
I would love it.
how
And so
could something like that be brought up?
yes, and I will.
okay.
It can be brought forward. I will bring it forward. And here's what I will say. So I learned Mandarin Chinese officially through our Department of Defense language school. And I nurtured it here in Richland at an amazing church, our Chinese church on George Washington Way. I would take lessons to kind of supplement. And so we, in our own community, April, as you allude to, we have amazing resources to help this proposition.
Yeah.
And so I would look for a holistic grassroots resourcing to try to get this pushed along. But what I will do as a school board director, I will propose this to my board and our administration as early as tomorrow to ask, because I believe what I believe. And I think facts will vet me out. Spanish and Mandarin Chinese are the desired languages for international trade. We are a global society. We know where most of the trading happens. This just makes sense. So I will initiate, and I will report back through Dr. Lin so that he can share with all of you.
So Yi Chen had typed in a question about the counselor ratio in high school.
So I cannot see the question yet, but
So I would have wanted to close the program, but Yi Chen, just go ahead and ask quick simple question.
We have sorry, we have too many questions for Mr. Bird, since this is really rare occasions, and I think it helped to have this virtual face-to-face communication to clear out some air. So one thing has been bothering me is the high school counselor ratio. It's too too minimal. On average, is one counselor work with 500 students. So one counselor per grade. And it is important, I would say, the school board should push more counselors, especially for junior and seniors, to help them to map out the college application or the career track applications. because the students is just as lost as their parents and don't know what to do. And it also shows that if without the school support, the gap will be bigger and bigger because people has no means to hire the private tutor or private advisors. Therefore they lost chances to achieve their dream. And so that is just one question. The other question is that as far as I know, because the little bluebird told me that the dual language program was started as soon as next year in next school year in West Richland some elementary school, but it would still start with Spanish. I support having dual language, but I'm so happy to hear that you are considering Chinese. I think Richland itself should have its own character, its own unique stance to say, hey, we're capable of doing that. And sort of answer April's question, how do we contribute? First of all, Washington is required you to having a teaching certificate. We do have I'm not advertising here, but I'm advertising now. WSU Tri-City has a really good dual language program. If you want to be a dual language teacher, it's right at home. You can stay at home, you can go take classes and go home. And in the meantime, a year and a half later, you got your teaching certificate. So I hope that while you were talking to the board of resources, do mention that in Tri-City, we do have the program to support if the board want to proceed that program. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for that resource. So I will definitely propose that as well, because that I did not know. And speaking of what we don't know, this is the beauty of having more counselors and advisors available for our students. There's a lot of families. And again, I came from a very poor family and a single mom. My mom did everything she could, but she did not know how to get grants. She did not know different career tracks or fields. She did not know to teach me about banking, so financial literacy and all those things. My mom didn't know. She was busy raising us the best she can, and I think she did a fabulous job, and providing for us. She did an amazing job. This is where counselors come in to help map out the futures for our children. So to answer your question, we have more funding that is coming in for mental health and medical and nursing, things of that sort. But as those funds come in, the funds we have been using to stipend or to support those programs, I think, and again, I don't want to speak out of turn, but it's worth having the discussion to see what we can do to shift funds in support of having more counselors and advisors. That is also the beauty of levies. Those extra monies that come through in levies that we recently passed helps to supplement programs where state funding does not meet the requirement or meet our needs. So you bring forth two very value added. And I promise you guys, I'm a nice guy, but I don't agree with you if I don't agree with you. I would tell you, I would defer and say, I don't agree. I respectfully disagree. I believe this. And then we can learn from one another, or we say we agree to disagree, but you're a nice person, I'm a nice person. So I just want you to know, when I say yes, I'm not agreeing with you to be nice. I'm agreeing because I believe it in my heart. This just makes sense. I could have used it as a young man as well. I thought my only avenue when I dropped out of school, because I did not have these resources, at least wasn't applicable to me, I joined the Marine Corps. That was my option. There were probably other options. This is the beauty of having our counselors and advisors. So I am a fan of that. And again, the dual language, having resources that then you added the program at WSU Tri-Cities right here in our own backyard. Absolutely. We are bringing, and then in organic resources right here in our own community, right? Yes, this just gives all the support for what I will bring forward to the board. And I will bring all this forward to the board. It makes sense.
Okay, so I think we are going to have to put this meeting to a close. So why don't we all virtually give a clap to put our hands together for Mr. Bird for taking the time on a Sunday afternoon to answer our
谢
questions.
谢你们，谢谢。
All right.
Jen,
Bye bye.
Thank you,
And
everybody.
hopefully we can have more of these discussions. I think it's beneficial for the whole community. And so, yeah, again, thank you for your service.
I'm honored, my friend. Take care. Bye, everybody.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.